The door latches used in the Chevrolet SSR pickup are known to have a water intrusion problem at the top of the latch. Under that metal strap, there's a white cover. Under the white cover, there's a black cover with a rotating pin. And then under the black cover is a contact assembly that rotates. And in that area, corrosion can build up, causing a lack of contact. There's two particular circuits in there, a window indexing circuit and a door ajar circuit that can no longer function correctly when that has the corrosion build up. So often you'll have to replace it with a rebuilt unit or pull one from a wrecked SSR. I'm going to go through in this video the operation and contact pins and how to test for a functional area of that before you go through all the trouble of trying to install it in your vehicle. So let's get into it. I would like to demonstrate the door handle signal circuit behavior, one from the door handle pull itself, and then the second one from the rotation of the door latch. You'll see in this video that there are two parallel paths for that particular circuit, one from the door handle being pulled, be it the inside or the outside, which causes the lower portion of the door latch to be rotated. And there's a stick plunger type connector with a connector on the end of it that moves into a state which will cause the door handle signal to be grounded. And then that will initiate the window to be indexed downward. And that only temporarily does it. And the second part of that is, because you're going to eventually release the door handle, the second part is the door latch will rotate that gear, causing the other portion of that same door handle signal to be grounded, and that's what keeps the window indexed down the entire time you have the door open, or at least the latch in the open position. So I'm going to hold the door in the closed position. I'm just going to pull the door handle, and you should see that the roof door module will index down by pulsing the window regulator motor to bring the window down about 9 millimeters. And you can see the tape is at the edge of where I had the weather stripping there, and you can see that it moved downward. I'm going to release the door handle, and again, I haven't allowed the door to move at all, so the latch hasn't moved. And this will cause the window to go up. Again, pull, go down, release, go up. So the thing that keeps the window down is, one, you initiate it by the door handle pull, and then when you open the door, the latch moves, causing the second switch in that particular parallel circuit to ground that circuit, and that keeps the window index down. So if you have spotty connectivity or corrosion in that's why you might open the door handle pull might work, because that's one switch. And then if you open the door, the latch portion of that switch inside of that rotating gear assembly with those 4 contact pads that you'll see in this video, it may not have proper contact, or the contact pad isn't positioned correctly to get it in full contact to cause the ground to continue, and that's why the window may index upward. I did have a video on the channel about adjusting the travel path of the door latch, and that was kind of a temporary fix I've found in the long run since that particular thing. The real problem is inside that door latch rotating assembly. Now that the window is indexed downward, again, if I pull the handle, it's not going to make any difference here, because the second switch in that dual switch parallel pathway is still grounding that particular door handle signal, and it's keeping the window indexed downward. If I manually close the door latch here, that will cause the window to then index upwards. So those two work together to cause the window to be index downward at the right time by initiating the door handle pull and then keeping it down while the door is open. It's necessary to initiate the window indexing downward by the door handle pull, because you don't want to have the window engaged in the weather stripping as you're trying to open the door. So that's why the door handle pull initiates the indexing, and the door latch rotation is the one that keeps it down while the door is open. I'd like to demonstrate how the door latch assembly circuits are involved in turning off the retain accessory power. Normally when you have the ignition on like I do, you would then turn the ignition off, and certain items such as the stereo, like I have here, it retains power for up to 10 minutes until the door is opened. And I've tested so far where if I pull the door handle by itself without allowing the door to move, it does stay on still. But as soon as the latch is allowed to move, that's when it cuts it off. So the door ajar circuit appears to be the thing that cuts it off. So let me set this down and re-aim this on the side here so you can see it. Let's get this as far out of the way as possible. Now the retain accessory power is still on. I wish I could do both here at the same time, but I have to hold the door handle here. I'm going to now just pull the handle, which causes that door handle switch circuit to be grounded, signal circuit to be grounded. and the power is still on the radio. Now if I let go, it's still on. Pull it again, it's still on. So if I allow the door to move outward, that's when the power turns off. So that shows you that the door ajar circuit is the thing responsible for cutting off the retain accessory power. So if your particular vehicle's not turning off the power after you open the door, be it the passenger or driver's side one in the SSR, it should turn that off. If it is not, then you do have a door latch issue with that particular door, or both. At least that's the most likely cause due to the corrosion that builds up in that rotating connection assembly at the top of the door latch. I'm now showing you the inside of the driver's side door latch and the 3 connectors for it. They're labeled C1, C2, and C3 according to the wiring diagram. I'm going to focus mainly on the C1 connector and the rotating connection assembly, switch assembly on the other side. But for information, on the upper right we have the C2 connector, which is for the door key switch, so that it knows whether you're using the key to open or unlock the door. So if the alarm is active and you're manually unlocking it, it knows to set off the alarm. In the lower left, we have the door lock actuator for lock and unlock on the driver's side. That's connector C3. So that's what moves brings power to the motor for the door lock. And then the upper left, we have the door ajar and window indexing circuit connector for the driver's side, and that's labeled as connector C1. Here's the passenger side door latch. It's pretty much a mirror image as far as the positioning for the connectors. Upper left, we have the door key switch for the passenger side, connector C2. The upper right, we have the door ajar window indexing connector on the passenger side, connector C1. And the lower right, we have the door lock actuator, unlock and lock passenger side, connector C3. I'm now going to focus in on the connector C1 for the driver's side latch in this particular picture, and I'll show you the passenger side one. It's a little different than this one, but very similar. You can see that there are pin assignments labeled A, B, C, and D, and that does go from left to right in both driver's side and passenger side when you're looking at the latch from this point of view. But the circuit that's assigned to each pin is basically mirror image between the two of them. So in the driver's side, pin A is the door handle switch signal. Now there are 2 switches involved with this. I believe I mentioned that earlier in the video. There's one from that plunger that's attached to the door handle movement, and then the other one is in the rotating contact switch at the top of the latch that's based on the door latch position. So there's 2 of those that will potentially connect pin A to the ground on pin D, depending on the particular position of the door latch or the door handle. Pin B is associated with the door ajar signal. That's solely attached to the movement of the rotating contact assembly at the top of the door latch. Pin C is not used in this particular version of the door latch for the SSR, and then of course pin D is the ground. Here's the passenger side version of the door latch, connector C1. You can see the pin assignments are again left to right, A, B, C, and D, but the circuits assigned to each one have been mirror imaged from the ones on the driver's side. A is the ground, B is not used in this particular version of the latch in the SSR, C is the door ajar switch signal, and again D is the door handle switch signal, which involves those 2 switches as I mentioned before. I've reassembled the driver's side door latch assembly to hopefully be a functional unit. We'll walk through the physical connections where there are 4 on the driver's side here. There are 3 on the passenger side. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And then we have the 3 electrical connections that we've been talking about in this video. Again, this is the driver's side door latch. So we have the C1 connector that we've been talking about, and I have pins A and D. Pin D is the ground and pin A is the door handle signal related connector pin in this one that we'll be talking about in just a moment. We have the C2 connector, which is related to what they're calling a key position or key status, but it's actually the door lock, whether it's locked or unlocked, and that's important to know in a couple of situations. Connector for the motor that drives the lock and unlock feature for the door lock inside the latch. The 4 physical connections we have down here on the latch assembly. We have that exterior key cylinder connecting rod that goes up to that lock cylinder on the driver's door. And again, that's not present on the passenger side. And here's the passenger side one to show that it's just not there on that particular one. And then the other orange plastic piece here is where the connecting rod from that rotating assembly that you have to unbolt and bend the tabs on to get out of the door. That's used to connect to the pull piece on the interior of the door for the door lock, whether it's locked or unlocked. So those 2 are related to the lock status of the latch at this point. This particular connector goes to the exterior door handle on the driver's side. It is a threaded assembly on this end of the connecting rod so you can adjust the overall length of it to get the proper travel for when the door handle is opened and then it is in its resting position. Then this piece here, I've seen this also in a yellow color on some of them. In fact, the passenger one has it in that same kind of yellow plastic color. This is the connection piece for the rod that comes from the interior door handle that runs to this point here and then goes through this. There's a 90-degree bend in it, and you put it through there and then snap this over the connecting rod. When the door handle is pulled on the interior of the vehicle, this is pulled forward to move this assembly. You can see it moves both the exterior piece and the interior piece, but the exterior piece from the connecting rod here does not move the interior part because it's detached at that point down here. Right here, you can see that it doesn't actually move that part, but the interior one pulls on that little tab there to move the whole thing for both of them. Now, as you may have seen, the multimeter was moving there. A 1 on the multimeter means infinite resistance or an open circuit. And I have this connected to pin A, which is the door handle switch signal circuit, and then pin D, which is the ground on the driver's side. And when you pull the exterior door handle, again, we're talking earlier about the indexing downward of the window, the initiation of that. It's initiated by the movement of the door handle. So when you pull on that door handle on the outside, it actually pushes down on this, and you can see that plunger is pulled. That's part of that 2-switch circuit related to the door handle switch signal. And when you release that, that goes to open circuit state again. So that again was only for when the handle was being pulled, because you're going to release the handle and open the door, so the windows will index down if it's unlocked. And that's the other part we'll talk about here in just a second. If it's unlocked, you pull the handle, it will index the window down, and when you fully pull the door handle, it will unlatch to the latch, and that second switch that's inside that latch, the switch assembly on the top of the latch here, up here we were seeing that connection pad up here, the ground was here, and then the door handle signal switch, part of it was up here. So that's what continues to be connected when the latch is in the open position. But let's again focus on this. So you can see I go from 1, which is infinite resistance, open circuit, and it actually goes down and shows that it's got continuity at this point. But notice that I have it in the lock position. It's not actually releasing the latch. And you have to then say, well, why does it index the window down? That's related to the C2 connector, where it knows that the door is in the latch is in the lock state. So it should ignore that in that particular case. And also, if you end up moving the door lock by using the key, if the alarm is activated on the vehicle by locking it with the fob, and you go to unlock it with the key or pull the door lock knob on the inside, it will actually set off the alarm. That's how it knows that it's in a locked or unlocked state. So it pays attention to that in a couple of situations. And so let's look at that, where pull on that, it causes it to be connected, and then you release the handle, that goes away. And then the latch rotating up here should cause that circuit to continue to be connected. But we're in the lock state, so we know it's not going to index the window down in that case. So let's go to a unlock state. So I've moved it to the point where we're unlocked, and I'm going to pull on the exterior door handle. It'll begin the continuity, and you can hear the door latch actually released at that point, and notice the continuity is still there even though I've released that. Again, that's because of that second switch in the upper switch assembly is in the closed state. So it's again that little pad on the upper left corner and the ground here are being connected. I've had some problems here. I've had to press on this sometimes to get the actual continuity to work. But notice that the latch is in the open position and the circuit is still closed, so we're grounded at this point, and it knows to keep the window indexed down. So if you have a situation where you're opening the door, it does index down at that point. You know that stick plunger switch is actually working, but if the window indexes back up after you open the door, it's because this switch is not working correctly. There's some corrosion or lack of continuity, just like I'm having the problem with this particular one. But what normally happens, you have the switch assembly connected, but if you close the first catch and then the fully latched position, notice the continuity was lost, as it should. So again, pulling out a part way, and we haven't released yet. Let's get my fingers out of the way there. So door is in the closed position, like I was showing you in the earlier demonstration in the front of the video. I've begun to pull on the door handle, and I'm still in the closed position, and you notice that it has actually gotten to the point of connecting based on the plunger style switch on the other side of the latch here. And then when I finally open the latch here, it continues. So that's the demonstration of that particular circuit. And let's move the pins over now. I'm going to connect to pin B, which is for the door ajar switch signal, like we were talking about earlier in the video. And again, pin C on the driver's side is not used. So in this case, let me get better continuity here. Of course, that might be I have poor continuity inside that switch assembly. Notice there's some resistance. If I press on this, it probably, yeah, there's some problems still up there. But notice in this case, it believes the latch to be open, so the door ajar message would be on in the case if the ignition were in the on position, or if the ignition were in the off position with the retain accessory power still active, then it would have canceled it. So again, let's go through that behavior. So here we are with the door closed, it's fully latched, and then I begin to pull on the door handle. Notice that does not influence this particular circuit at all. And when the door latch finally gets released, of course we're having problems here, it should, got my continuity here. See, that's the problem with this particular, there's some problems with the connection in this upper switch here. What it's supposed to, there we go. You can see that it's showing that it's open. That's what should cancel the retain accessory power and also give you the door jar message if the ignition is on. So ignition on gives you door jar, ignition off with the retain accessory power, it will cancel that. So if you open the door with the radio still running and the keys already removed, it should turn off the power. If it doesn't, it's related to that switch that I'm having problems with, this particular one. This is a previously refurbished door latch that did have some technical issues. I was given permission to go ahead and open up for investigative purposes. I've removed the bottom portion of the door latch entirely, and I've taken the metal strap off the top and the white plastic cover that normally goes over that gear. I've moved the gear now to the door latch open position, and you can see that one of the three circuits is now connected to the ground circuit. There are 3 input signals to that connector and 1 ground, and then all 3 are connected to ground when moved to the open position. So this is that gear and the black plastic piece underneath it removed, and since this was previously refurbished, these are pretty easy to take off. The contact pads that are there underneath the black plastic are what are rotated by that gear, and as you can see, they're all electrically connected, so everything's connected to ground when the latch is in the open position, and everything has no continuity when it's moved to the door latch closed position. And here is the contact pads that can build up the corrosion, as well as the contact area down on the main switch itself. So this is usually where the failure occurs electrically inside the switch. Now let's take a look at the 4 contact pads on the other side of this switch assembly. We're looking at pin A on driver's C1 connector that corresponds to the upper left-hand contact pad for the door handle switches. This is the one that's involved in letting the RDM know to keep the window in the lowered index position. And the other switch again is that plunger stick style switch on the other side of the door latch. But the one inside of this particular switch assembly is the one that tells the RDM to keep the window index down the entire time the door is open. Now let's move on to the ground in this switch assembly, and it's a large contact pad just below the one we looked at before, and this corresponds to pin D in the driver C1 connector. This is important to have clean connectivity to this one, since the other 3 contact pads in here would complete their ground connection to this particular pad. If there's corrosion in here, you would get a problem if it's on the ground contact pad or that rotating assembly above it. You would definitely see a problem in the other 3 circuits. Now, the SSR only uses 2 of those circuits, but if there's a common problem between the door ajar and the window indexing, it's probably that the ground is participating in that problem due to some corrosion. Now we move on to the not used connection in this switch assembly. It corresponds to pin C on the driver's side or pin B on the passenger side. So this does not participate in the door handle signal switch nor the door jar circuit. Now we're on to the last contact pad in this switch assembly, which is used for the door jar switch. When this is grounded to the ground contact pad, it lets the body control module know that the door is open, and depending on the situation, if you have the key in the ignition and the ignition on and you open the door, you'll get a door ajar message. Or if you have the engine running in the same situation, door opened, you'll get a door ajar message. If the ignition power is off, but you're in retain accessory power mode and open the door, it should turn off that retain accessory power. If it doesn't, there's probably a corrosion problem between this or the ground pad on this particular switch assembly. So those are the things that you should look for and how it works with the door latch assembly with the Chevrolet SSR. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. If it has been, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to get more information just like this. Hit that bell notification to be notified when I upload new videos. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.